What's going on YouTube, my AMPuNATION? What's going on amputees, soon to become amputees? Just a heads up on this video, I'm not good at video graphics and all the editing and stuff like that, so bear with me. This is going to be a more hands-on video than just me talking to a camera, and so I'm going to be working with different takes and stuff. So I'm going to try and get it all done on the first take, but I doubt that's going to happen. But today I want to talk about Ply Socks, what they are, why we need them, and some life hacks you can do, you know, if you need to, for certain situations like an ingrown hair or a sore spot or friction spot, and go from there. And I kind of have an agenda to try and keep it all one direction and organized. So these are Ply Socks, and what they're for is making sure that when you're in your prosthetic, the bottom of your liner, of course I thought I had one ready and I don't, I'll just use my leg one, has these pins, or at least pin and lock sockets. This is mostly a pin and lock video, but you'll see this pin, here's the liner, and basically when you first get your leg amputated, and in most cases, most people, you know, they haven't atrophied too much in their leg before they lose it. So they have a lot of atrophy to go, and that's deterioration, or if you don't use it, you lose it, your muscles shrink over time, become weaker, your bone actually loses bone density from not being used, stuff like that. So basically when you start out as an amputee, you're gonna, your leg's you're gonna have a big old socket, and these are some of my older ones. I have one that goes all the way up to here, and it's massive. And you know, it's because my leg was so big at the time. And then I would wear Ply Socks throughout the day, and I would be increasing my Ply Socks throughout the day, depending on certain situations, and I'm going to go over that. So they're basically there to keep you from bottoming out inside your prosthetic. It's the bottom of the prosthetic, and the actual nub should be about this far away, and there should be about that much slack in the pins. Your actually leg is suspended in the prosthetic, and how it does that is by pressure points, pushing the fronts or the sides, squeezing the calf. Almost think of it as a cone with something trying to go in, and it'll stop when it can't go any further in the cone. And that's what prosthetic sockets, that's how they work. There's different kinds. There are, and this is important for new amputees, there's a little release on here, and this little thing will spin, and that's, you can stick a coin in and tighten your leg on. Especially new amputees, when they go to get their leg on in the morning, it's going to be really big, and it's going to be really hard to get into. And that's because when you're sleeping, your body stores fluid in its limbs. It also applies to high altitude. I'm in Colorado, we're a mile above sea level, and then I go hiking on top of that to 8,000, 10,000 feet and stuff like that, and I have to bring an ace bandage because the downward pressure is forcing fluid into my limbs. And if I get to the top of that mountain and I want to take my leg off and rest from the big treacherous hike, if I go to try and put it back on, it's not going to go on. So I would have to take my leg off and wrap it in an ace bandage, and I keep it nice and compressed until I wanted to put my prosthetic back on, and then make my way down. Or you might be stuck up there and you're going to need a little help, or it's going to take a while to get your leg on. So that's where Ply Socks come into play. So as mentioned, when you sleep, your body stores fluid in its limbs. Well, as the day progresses, depending on how active you are, that fluid's going to move throughout your body. It's going to circulate like blood. It's going to be moving through all different areas of your body. A lot of it's stored for hydration and stuff like that. There's bursts in your body. The fluid is there. It's just what happens at night. So usually in the morning, you're not going to start with, for at least beginners, you're not going to start with usually any ply, or your prosthetist sets you up with like a 1 ply to 3 ply starting zone. And for me, when I had my leg done, I wore one sock, the one ply, the thinnest, well, not thinnest, there's also a half ply. I wore the one ply, and even then I would have a hard time getting my leg in. Now back then I was using one of these pin lock systems that click. So this is the end piece of the liner that you put on your leg. This is what holds the prosthetic to you. And there's little clicking mechanisms. The older ones, let me get these out of my way. The older ones are, or different style, necessarily older, because there's probably new technology that still uses the click method. But when I stick it through this hole, that's 3 clicks, 4 clicks, 5 clicks, 6, 7, so forth. And now it's locked into place until I press that button and release it out. And that's how it holds onto your leg. Well, in the morning, you might actually not have to put on any ply. You notice that your leg, it's kind of hard to get in, so you get one click in, and then what I like to do is use a coin. I try and carry a coin with me, and then that got old because I would lose them. And at the beer festival, I was given a stainless steel beer bottle opener, and it's on a keychain, and it fits right in there to tighten my leg on. So when I click my leg in, mine is just silent. And this is important because you want to make sure your leg is on before you go to take a step. When I first stepped into a silent socket and I was adjusting my leg on the street, adding a ply sock, and then I went to put my leg in and the ply sock was just a little too big for my situation, and I thought my leg was in because it doesn't make that clicking sound. I went to take a step, my prosthetic stayed right there, and I went all full body, full force, straight down onto a pointy little pin and lock tip that would bend, and it pulled my muscle, and it hurt like hell. Heck, pardon me. And so my rule of thumb also on this is when you first put your leg in and it's tough to get in, if you can get it in one notch, then make sure you twist it until you feel that pressure on the sides. You want to make sure it's nice and snug. You don't want it to feel like it's going numb from too much pressure. And you are going to have a lot of uncomfortabilities at first, and then that's usually when you wear your sitting down, you'll wear your prosthetic for like 15 minutes on, 15 minutes off, then the next day 30 minutes on, 15 minutes off, then the next day 45 minutes on, 15 off, and you slowly build up the ability to wear it. If I were to stop wearing my prosthetic today, and I waited like 2 months and I went to put it on, I would have to re-go through that process because my leg wouldn't be so adapted, the nerve endings wouldn't be as desensitized as they are. So always make sure that, my rule of thumb is if you have a clicking system like this, 3 clicks. 3 clicks and you should be good. And these you can also, oh, not on this model, but so that's very important. Like on that model there, make sure you have 3 clicks. If you don't have a little knob that you're able to tighten it with, make sure you're at least 3 clicks in. If they're silent, most likely they're gonna have this little flathead entrance, and a keychain works great so you don't lose it. So those are some of the tools there, and some of the rules of thumb. Always make sure it's 3 clicks in. If you put a ply sock on and you get it to 1 click, you take a few more steps and you can work, usually within the first 30 steps of putting on a ply sock that's pretty big, and you only get 1 click in. If you walk carefully for about 30 seconds, just back and forth in your house, it'll slowly click. After a few more steps, click, and you'll get to that 3rd click. And keep a mental note of what click you're on. So when you first get it, you might have a hard time getting it to 3 clicks in, and then come a month later, you're just standard active, just regular walking around, like for walking the dog, stuff like stuff around the house, and now you notice that you're getting into 4 or 5 clicks. That's when you want to go ahead and add a ply, and they come in 1, 3, 5, half plies, There's ply patches that are just little fabric sections that you can put in different places. And today I'm going to show you some hacks on some hands-on stuff. I'm just kind of going over the talk stuff at first, but the juicy stuff's at the end, so make sure you follow and watch all the way to the end. You can skip too, I don't care either, as long as you get the information that you need. So, like I said, and they're color coded most of the time. This is a 5-ply, and they're usually a dark blue. 3-ply will be some kind of green, and then 1-ply is going to be a kind of silver white color like that. They also come in black. I used to get those because I thought that they would be less dirty, less messy. They attract a lot of heat in the summertime, and then I noticed that I was sweating underneath my liner and having to take it off, dry my nub off, and then reassess what ply needed and continue on. So I chose with the white ones. So with that being said, I kind of want to go over, I have an agenda here, bear with me. Like I said, this is mostly for like pin and lock sockets. I am not too sure how Ply Socks work with suction systems, and I apologize for that. I can always look into it and get the right information, or someone else's channel that knows that information for you guys. So I guess I'm going to go over when's a good time to reduce ply, and like I mentioned, with your body storing fluid. Say you're in a 3-ply and you're walking around, you're doing daily, you mowed the lawn, you've probably been active for maybe 30 minutes. I would then address the situation and unclick it, see how many clicks you go in, see if you get more clicks that way, or if you check just mental notes every 30 minutes. Does it feel like I'm getting pressure? Does it feel sore in any spot? Do I feel friction? Does something not feel right? And it could be a lot of sweat making that leg slide up and down, or it could be that you need to add more ply because you are sweating fluid, you're excreting fluid, making your limbs smaller. And so usually around 30 minutes of activity is a good time to stop, sit down, maybe dry your nub off, dry your liner off on the inside, add a little bit of ointment if you have friction spots. I'm talking paper thin or less. Roll your liner back on, put your ply on that you used to have, count the clicks, put the next size ply on instead, and see if you can get to that sweet spot, the number of clicks that you find the most comfortable. And I just recommend at least 3. You can have more. And my other recommendation, and this depends, I know I've gotten a lot of backlash on Facebook because, well, I know someone that has 40 ply and they're all good with it, or I know someone with 28 ply, and that's fine. That's totally fine. The purpose of them is stabilization due to atrophy or lack of fluid being in the nub. That way you always have a perfect fitting prosthetic throughout the day, and if you become less active, you're able to manipulate that by reducing your ply and putting on smaller amounts of ply to get to that sweet spot. They're just kind of little micro adjustments for your day, because that's a permanent size, that's permanently done. And you can see in my wings here, when I was atrophying too much for this leg, I had too much space in between those two sides. And my ply, I was up to 10 ply or whatever, 12 ply, and it was just, the weight of all the socks was clumping up, and it was hard for me to fold my leg all the way, and it was just a pain in the butt. And my prosthetist recommended, once you get above 6 ply, maybe you might want to go to your prosthetist and ask for new measurements. And if you meet the requirements with your insurance and your policies with your insurance, then they can get you set in for a new socket. Obviously, I went through a lot of them getting to this 0-ply socket. I'm in a ply socket that I've been done atrophying for a while, so now I don't need to wear ply. I'll bring a backpack, and I always do whenever I'm going out of civilization, like hiking in the woods, or if I plan on being gone for a few days. I always make sure to have a backpack with a few in it of one of each size, a 5, a 3, and a 1. And in a 0 ply, I should never have to reach a 5 ply sock, no matter how much exercise. I walked 10 miles on the strip in Vegas and didn't have to add a single ply. But I keep them just in case I might need to add a 1 ply if I'm really sweating bad or the fluid's moving real fast, if I was running or something. So it's important that when you're wearing your prosthetic that it doesn't wobble side to side up here. You don't want this. This is dangerous when you're walking. You don't want that. So you want to make sure whatever ply you have on doesn't make the leg, your nub is staying still, but if you lean a certain way it wobbles. Or you don't want it wobbling in any direction. That's unstable, and you need to go get measurements or add ply. And if the ply is not helping, then go speak with your prosthetist. Or if you're up at 10, 15 ply, that's where I draw the line. I won't go over 6. That's my personal thing, and I have so many. I really don't even need to go in for them anymore. So that's that. And one day you will reach that. Some people could have had a motorcycle and tipped it and woke up in the hospital with their leg gone. All that, they were strong just using their leg the day before. They're going to have a lot of atrophy to happen. You're going to go through a lot of sockets, and they're going to get from bigger to smaller and lighter. In the old sockets, and I'm going to teach some tricks now. I'm going to get more hands-on at this point, and this is to modify Ply Socks for situations if you have an ingrown hair, or say your insurance doesn't cover so many visits, or whatever the case, you can't get to a prosthetist to get new measurements or get a new socket made, or have them do some shaping, and they'll grind out the inside. Sometimes they'll make new cavities that relieve pressure on a certain spot. If you notice you're getting a lot of ingrown hairs in one spot, it becomes painful. Even one ingrown hair is painful to walk on all day, and people don't get that. The ingrown hair, that's weak. It's like, no, you have no idea when your leg is so sensitive underneath this silicone liner for 7 years and hasn't had anything but silicone covering it. It's very sensitive. So, you know, I'm going to show you how to hack these in a way that's simple. I recommend doing it on only your extras, and then keeping those extras for if situations happen again, unless it's in a totally different position and then you need to modify the prosthetic sock a little differently. So always make sure that you have enough in your wings. In this one here, you can notice how fat those wings got on the sides, and they had to add a pad inside this, and this is the 2 different types. This is the newer style, and this rubber allows them to make modifications to the inside without damaging the integrity of the prosthetic. As you can see, the carbon fiber line here, actually it got so thin that it cracked the wing and was deemed no longer safe. And that's even with me having special plastic put around it to keep it all, you know, safe and protected. So you can see, you know, that's one way to do it. And this is the one. Pardon the logos on the inside. You'll notice that I do have some wing straps, and that's all I needed at the time. And this one doesn't do the plastic inside liner. These are just, this is how they come. They're a little lighter at the socket, but depending on what foot you have, that might not even matter. And if you can notice in here, there's a lot of grinding down. They had to grind this down, which weakens the integrity of it all. And they had to grind out a lot of spots to get it fit my leg right, because as you atrophy, your leg's going to change. The shape of it's going to change. And I put shorts on for this reason here. Here's my leg. And now that I'm done atrophying, see, there's the red spots from the pressure points that keep me from bottoming out. You'll notice them in the back here from my leg being creased. This is where I've always had my problems. And you can see I have ingrown hair scars. And there's even calluses building up right here. And so the hack that I'm about to show you guys is going to be how to find that exact spot on the inside of your prosthetic, how to find that spot exactly on your liner, and where to put a ply sock, cut a hole in the ply sock to allow more space until you can get into your doctor or prosthetist where they can maybe hollow that corner out, or whatever the modifications that need to be done, trial and error. Usually it's an hour of back and forth walking, adjusting, back and forth walking, adjusting until it feels right. And don't feel bad. That's their job. If you have to be there for a couple hours to get it right, make sure you get it right, because it can cause a lot of pain, especially if you don't drive. You can be in a world of hurt having to walk home or take the bus home on a misfitting prosthetic. That's going to cause friction burns. That's going to cause skin erosion. Then you're going to have to deal with ultra sensitive skin. And then you're going to have to start putting like bag balm or Vaseline in an ultra thin layer, because too much creates more sliding. It spreads out and it makes the whole area slide around. So now you're just sliding silicone against skin and it's already rubbed raw. So you always want to do the thinnest amounts. Half of a pea spot for a circle this big. Half of a little green pea. Half that little dip, and that's all you need, a bag balm or Vaseline. And that's how to kind of decrease the sensitization. Then you put this on, and I'm going to go ahead and change the camera angle so I can get better hands on and get you guys some better footage on how to do this. All right. So I forgot to add something very important, and this is kind of the how-to part and when to, why to part. Let's start with signs that you need more ply. And here it is. If your prosthetic wobbles side to side, like I mentioned with the wings, it's time to add more ply, because that instability can tear your ACL. A lot of stuff can happen during that. If it feels unsafe, feels like when you're walking forward, if you can feel even that slight little shift forward or back, and it just feels like it's like wobbly when you're walking, that's time to sit down, reevaluate it, and go from there. Something that I also recommend doing every time that you check your ply, if you have to sit down to check it, I recommend checking it every 30 minutes of activity, or 30 minutes after activity is when I'll reassess if I still need that same amount of ply or if I don't. And that can be from starting in a 1 ply, and then I mow the front yard, took about a half hour, and it's time for me to assess, okay, well, I noticed that it kind of got uncomfortable a little bit on the side, where I pointed out on the last part there on that little bone tip. And so I'm like, wow, it's kind of hurting. I'm going to sit down. So I sit down, I enroll, I take off the prosthetic, I take off the ply sock, I enroll the liner, and I'll take a clean white wash rag, and I will wipe my leg down. I will wipe the silicone all down. If I have any friction sore spots, so like I said, I'll apply that thin layer, and then I'll re-put it on, and then put the ply sock on, and then the same one that I was using. If I notice that just taking it off, drying it off, and adding that little bit of ointment, but the same ply, keep it. Keep that ply until you start to notice uncomfortability. Anytime, if it's before 30 minutes, check it. But be in good habit of being conscious of what your leg is telling you, because one wrong mistake and one time you ignore it and just go through the pain thinking it's something small could end up causing a lot of serious pain down the road, or infection, because these liners can act like petri dishes. So it could just be that you needed to dry your leg off. So always check that. Always, if it's hot, if it's in the middle of winter, you're probably not going to have a lot of sweat under there if you're outside. So like I said, after 30 minutes of any kind of activity, you might want to just sit down and just reassess everything. Put on a bigger ply, and if you notice that feels more comfortable after 10 steps forward, 10 steps back, keep that on. If you notice that the one you were originally wearing works best, keep that one on. You know, and go from there. If your activity gets higher, the next 30 minutes after work, you know, so the first 30 minutes you do a check, and then you do another hour of activities. It's good to check probably every half hour, but if you know, now that a full hour has gone by, you definitely want to dry your leg off if you can in the summertime or in hot regions of the world or United States. So that's when I would do that. That's when I would think, okay, I've been active, the fluid's pumping through my body, I'm sweating a lot, I'm expelling a lot of fluid. It's time to see if I need to add another ply. And this mostly applies towards amputees within like the first 5 years. At least for me, it took 5 years before I got into a 0-ply socket that I don't have to worry about it. Maybe I need a 1-ply. I mean, depends. Let's see here. And of course, atrophy. If you notice when you wake up in the morning and your leg gets only 1 click in, but then 6 months later you notice that you're sticking your leg in, you're getting 6 clicks in, and that, or that you're having to start in a bigger ply than you did when you first had it amputated, or just 6 months ago or whatever like that. These are signs to keep an eye out for, because depending on your insurance, if you have to wear over a certain amount of ply socks, they deem it as coverable by insurance. And I could be wrong in some areas. As far as my case, that's how it was justified, was by the ply levels and the atrophy that I went through over the course of 5 years. So that, you know, maybe in a year, 2 years after your amputation, you know, and you're still in the same socket, you're probably going to be wearing 6-ply, 7-ply, 8-ply if it's, you know, your first prostate, because you're going to atrophy a lot in that first year, and then you're going to atrophy more in the next year. And things change. Sometimes the shape of the nub changes a little bit. I've seen nubs fold in at the scar line. I've seen a ton of stuff. And so you're going to have to get those adjustments made. And that's what I am going to do next. I forgot to cover some of this stuff here. Signs that you need less ply. You, like I said, with the fluid in your body in the morning, you're probably going to start with less ply. If you've been active for 30 minutes or an hour, and you decide you want to take a break, go get some lemonade, you mowed the lawn, you want to go get lemonade or whatever, go sit in the house, watch a little TV. So you're sitting there watching TV for about a half hour, relaxing. That's a good time to recess. Say, okay, well, I was out there, I was in a 5-ply when I was out there, but it's been a half hour of me resting, and see if that 5-ply is still what you need, because you might have a hard time getting it on and be like, whoa, this popped right off and went right back on, you know, when I was checking it. But now that I've rested a half hour, that fluid starts to build back up. Your body starts to rest, gravity works its way down. There's a lot of things for this. So I would say after 30 minutes of rest, after 30 minutes of activity is a good time. Just keep that 30-minute rule. If you know, 30 minutes of activity, check it. 30 minutes of resting after activity, check it. If all you're doing is relaxing all day, I doubt you're going to even grow. I doubt you're going to need more ply that day if you're just laying in bed or just going to get something to drink or use the bathroom. So, you know, and you can find that out yourself. You can experiment. You know, take a day and just watch movies in bed and see if you need to change ply a whole bunch. And then, you know, if you can, be active as you can, and when you start to upgrade ply, then take a 30-minute break and see if you can still fit in those. And I'm probably going to bet not. But as the years go on, it will change. Resting after extreme activity, that's when, you know, like 30 minutes, I'm talking like super crazy running, or if you're really active doing something in an area, or you've been helping someone on a farm, or whatever it is you're doing, that's extreme activities, you know, that take a lot of exertion, because amputees have to exert 80% more energy every day to just do normal walking motor functions that two-legged people have, because we don't have the calf muscle, and it's even, I'm sure it's even higher for above the knee. And if you notice, you know, you sit down, you were resting after doing all those chores, and you have the same ply that you were wearing on, and you put it on and you can't get it past one click, or you have a hard time getting it to that first click, you might want to reduce it by, you know, if you were in a 5, drop to a 3. And if that's too little, if you're getting 4 or 5 clicks now, then you want to use a 3 and a 1 ply. You can put the 3 ply, then the 1 ply, and then that makes it a 4 ply sock. So you can literally, if you have a 5, a 3, and a 1, you can pretty much make just about, I mean, any combination there. So that would be my recommendation on that, is that, you know, count your clicks. If you have a silent one, make sure that when you screw it in, you feel it tightening and pressure. Because if you're screwing this and nothing's changing, there's no pressure, you don't feel your leg being pulled down, it's not in there. And you want to make sure your leg is in the little pin socket before you just take off. And if you can't do it, reduce ply, like I said, and that should get you to where you need to be. If it's too many clicks, only add 1 ply extra. You know, and then it's a trial and error. And I know it sounds like a lot. It becomes so second nature, like stick shift driving a car. You know, it's all the muscle memory of your feet and all. It becomes a mental memory, a mental muscle memory to what you need to do. You'll notice key trigger signs like, oh, I noticed this hurt last time this happened, and I needed a ply sock. Let's try and put a ply sock. It only takes a second to sit down, you know, take it off, add a ply sock. If that helps, good. If not, don't. If you're sweating real bad, or you've been in the hot sun all day, most likely you need to dry the sweat off and see where you're sitting there, because your leg is sliding back and forth in the silicone liner. As your prosthetic goes forward, slings out. And when you step down, it goes down, then slings out, then goes down, then slings out, then goes down every time you step, And that can cause problems and confuse people as well if their prosthetic's loose, when really they just need to dry it. And now when they walk, it feels like it's stuck like glue. And you notice a huge, huge difference. Like, well, how am I going to know if it's too sweaty? If it starts feeling slipping or loose, those would be my steps. Sit down and check it. And I'm telling you, it does wonders when you dry your leg off and put it back on. You're like, whoa, that thing feels like it's secure, it's on there. Mentally, I have confidence in it. I'm not too worried to take steps. It's not wobbly. And that extra confidence is going to help you walk straighter, I promise. You're going to walk smoother, better body mechanics, and everything like that. Alright, so now that I did that, let me make sure I didn't forget anything else. I do apologize. I have anxiety, and these videos do cause a little anxiety for me, so I get a little clustered and flustered. But I do them because I want to help you guys. I want to help you guys get where I'm at. So with those, I guess rules of thumb. Like I said, at least 3 clicks to be safe if you can hear it. If it doesn't click, use a coin or something and make sure you're twisting and you can feel it pulling it down. You can feel that pressure tightening. Don't twist it to where it hurts too much. But if that happens, you just push the button. It'll release the locking mechanism. Your leg will kind of shift up, and then you can push back down, start from 1, and get the proper clicks that you want. Yeah, and one thing is, you want the reason why is you're going to think your leg's on, and you take that step, and all your weight, you have nothing but your hands if you're ready to go down on, and you got to learn to fall. I have a plate in my side. I ended up landing on my hands and falling on my side, and I was laying on the side of the sidewalk for about 45 minutes screaming, you know, please God, please. And so after that one time, I made sure that I never made that mistake again. So those are kind of things you want to kind of get in a good habit of, like tying your shoelaces, you know, on your shoes. We all learned that habit when we were a kid. These are all habits you can now learn as an amputee. See, now that I clicked that button, it was loose. Once I lifted my leg up, the leg went down, locking it into place. And that was just the button going out. That wasn't the clicking mechanism. That was the button actually flying out because it was in a locking position. I do recommend also, as a rule of thumb, at night wear your shrinker socks. Wear shrinker socks if they're loose or if they're starting to slide down. If you notice that they don't stay up all the way, let your prosthetist know and see if insurance, those can be replaced sometimes every 6 weeks, 6 months, every year. I'm not sure, but you can get them pretty early, and Medicaid covers stuff like this, especially if there's a justifiable reason by a doctor, and they will make sure that you have that. So I double up. I wear 2 shrinker socks, and I'm 7-year amputee. I'm done atrophying. I wear shrinker socks. They help prevent blood clots. They promote circulation the right way. They reduce phantom pain, any discomfort from hot and cold. If my nub's too hot but the rest of my body's cold, I get electric pain, or vice versa while I'm sleeping. So that's always a good thing, and peace of mind while you're sleeping will help relieve some of that pain. And for beginners, that's going to help keep that swelling and fluid out of your limb, so in the morning you're not fighting getting that leg on. So always wear your shrinker socks, especially for new amputees. A few other things: if you go to the ocean, if you go swimming, if you go to the ocean and you're wearing Ply socks, a good habit to get into is to, once you get out, I know there's a lot of sand and stuff, if you can find a towel, or sometimes there's a little bench if you walk just a little farther up the beach. There's usually a rinse off station and a bench if you're at the ocean, or there's just a camping bench somewhere around if you're at a lake. And just walk up, take your prosthetic off, and you're going to pull those off, and you're just going to wring them out. And you don't really want to pull them straight and stretch them out like that. You just want to wring them out. Fold them and wring them out some more, and just get them nice and wrung out and put them back on, because they will add weight. Another thing is, this fills with water and sand. If you're standing in the shore and the waves are crashing in, expect this to fill with sand, which will deteriorate the Kevlar and makes it a lot heavier. So once you get up to either a bench or a beach towel, take your leg off while you're doing those. After you do those and set those over your leg, make sure you tip your leg upside down and drink all that water out, because on weight and pendulum, if you have a small nub but the rest of it's super long, it's going to be exerting a lot of force on the front here as your leg tries to hold it like this, because there's just not much. If it was halfway, it'd be easier, or down here the weight's less, so it would not be exerting as much force down, which exerts much force this way, which causes pressure. And I used to get sore bumps right here and bursitis because of that pressure, because I have such a short residual limb. So Ply socks also help prevent that. If they keep the leg sturdy enough, you're not going to notice that dipping if you have a real short residual limb. Alright, now on to the hands-on part. Okay, so here's the part with the tools you'll need to make these modifications to your Ply socks until you can get into a prosthetist, or they might just help resolve the issue, go away. Because ingrown hairs, I notice for me, if you don't give them time to heal, or if you keep wearing your leg and it keeps happening, the pressure's there all the time, they're not going to heal. So once you alleviate some of that pressure and they have a way to express themselves, it's easier that way. And then I'm also going to go, I want to show a few things for people that are still in this here to help make it a little more comfortable at night. Tools you're going to need: saran wrap. You can get it at the 99-cent store. A lighter or a small little torch. The little torch tips probably work better. This is what I have. Sharpie. Scissors. As cheap as you can find lipstick. This probably works the best that I've seen so far, and with the colors it really highlights where you might need to have some work done, or you might need to modify your socks. So this will help identify where that sore spot is and how to cut the proper hole in your Ply sock for that exact spot. And it's a little trick that I learned. In this scenario, this is good. Now, your prosthetist might be doing this to find those already. And this is something I don't want anyone, disclaimer, I don't want you modifying your prosthetic. This is Ply Sock modification. This is making a temporary relief plan until you can get into your doctor, or if you don't have the resources to go to a doctor, this might help alleviate the pain altogether. So as a disclaimer, don't start grinding the inside of your prosthetics. And the benefit of these guys here, the rubber inliners or insole or whatever they want to call them, the benefit of those guys is that they can actually modify them and shape them without damaging the integrity of the prosthetic itself and the socket itself and its carbon fiber structure. So with that said, I'm gonna go over, I'm just gonna use my sore spot on my leg to as an example for this whole situation. I'm gonna do a hands-on, and this is where it gets, you'll be able to see all of it go down. So I'll just go back and explain. This leg, there shouldn't be too much, but you'll see some rubbing in it. And basically, I'm going to say that sore spot on the bottom right of my nub is starting to hurt real bad. I know, where I have the calluses, I'm like, oh man, it hurts really bad. And it's hard to walk all day on something like that. And if adding and removing Ply Socks doesn't help change that, drying it off doesn't change that, then it sounds like your prosthetic needs to be modified and hollowed out in that area to allow new space. As atrophy happens, new pieces become pointier. The muscle and stuff swells in, so leaving hard structure like bone and stuff to stick out, and that can cause needing more modification. Once you shrink the prosthetic but the bone stays the same size, instead of being swollen and matching the bone, making it parallel, the atrophy will start, and then you'll notice that you'll need to have these little sections grinded out, or on the rubber inliners that will do that. So this is a temporary fix, and it might be a permanent fix for you, and I really hope that it is. So let's go ahead and get started. Let's say that I had that spot here. Let's say that I had that sore spot right here on that bone, that pointy spot right there. Now, in order to not get your liner dirty, I know some people don't care. This is just how to keep everything nice and clean. Bear with me as I get this taken out. Take some saran wrap. And you want to just wrap it around. Get it around once really good. Maybe come up towards the top here, especially if you want to check to see if you're bottoming out. And once you have a nice line, you can just pull it. Look at that. Not compressing my leg, not interfering with the pin and lock. Just like that. Let's Ply Socks here. Set those there for now. Marker, scissors. So we're done with this. So the next step, once I can find the lipstick, there it is. The next step, so it's been hurting for me right here. I'm gonna push around with my fingers. I'm like, there's that sore spot, there's that sore spot. And you're just gonna feel around. And you're just gonna cover that whole affected area. Find it with your finger, find the outside where it stops hurting and where it begins, and you do that. Or say like you want to know if you're bottoming out. When you're walking, it feels like you're walking on bone, or it hurts real bad at the very bottom. You can take this and just put it around there. Now I kind of made it too wide. You don't want to go too far up because the prosthetic might start up there and you want to be suspended this high. So make sure you're really finding out if you're bottoming out by doing maybe a quarter size, like a quarter size diameter circle on the bottom if you can. If you have a mirror, that works even better. You just put some there. It doesn't have to be fancy. Then you're going to take your leg, and if you're one of these people that have these, I recommend taking this out first, gently pushing it on, not too tight. You want the prosthetic to apply the pressure where the pressure is, not you pushing it down with your hand. That can lead you to some false results. Slide it into the prosthetic. Went ahead and push the button down, allowing it to go as far as it can. And I'll step. And now that I've stepped, I will kind of, if I need to lean on a railing, I will. I'll do this. I'll make a few of these, or I'll walk back and forth 5 feet, turn around, come back 5 feet, and just do something like this. And doing just that. Then keep your leg straight when you're taking off. You don't want to pull it out like this because you can cause the front to go like this, especially if you're looking for sore spots and where you want to modify your prosthetic sock. So with that being done, let's keep my leg parallel. Looks like it's going to come out with this piece. You pull that out, slide that off. Now if you look in here, you can notice they've already had to grind some out on the side, and I went a little too high. You can see that ring on the inside where it's lighter than the rest. You don't want to make the circumference any bit bigger than that. You want it to be some, maybe a 50-cent size piece. You want it just to be where this hollow part is. This is how much of the tip of your, this is how much you want to cover, is just this size. And that'll tell you if you're bottoming out in the prosthetic. And my right there, that's just from it sticking out like this a little bit. I did a horrible job wrapping it. But as long as you have a nice snug fit that goes around the base like that, and it's nice and flat and flush, you do your little circle of lipstick. And then for me, you can see this really where you can see where they've carved out on this side right here, and that's where my side is. Now it doesn't I don't have any more problems there because it was an ingrown hair, so it was to alleviate pressure. And then you can see in the bottom here where that bone was causing me problems, the bone right here. And when you're done, just take this off and throw it away, and it stays clean. Or you can do it on your liners if you have a really old liner that is still the proper size fitting. You can always try that too. But that's now that you've had that and you know where, you can see in your prosthetic where it was. And a lot of people will leave this on and kind of keep a mental note where it was. So then you take the ply sock, maybe a size bigger than what you were wearing, because you want it to be thick enough to give that some space. So now that I know that I have a little bit of pressure pushing on this piece right here, I'm going to apply my ply sock. I'll never get a 5 on. Let's cut this. We'll just cut this one and pretend it's a 3 or something. a little hard in a 0 ply. So put your liner on. You look in the inside and see where you were touching. So for me, I'm gonna cut where that red is, the real dark red circle right there, since that's where my problem was. So now, make sure that you have your ply sock not too stretched out. Best way to do that, grab a pinch of it, let it go, grab a pinch of it. This will bring it to a nice unstretched size, a nice accurate size for what it's supposed to be. I will then cut a circle or draw a circle and then I had the bottoming here, so I could ultimately open up the front. If I was bottoming out and I had no more ply socks, I could do this on a 5 ply. Since you're in so many ply anyways, you can actually cut a few of those out and relieve pressure that way. Now, what I just did, I just stuck my prosthetic back in there with the lipstick. Make sure you wipe it out if you don't want it staining your liner. They will stain your liner. So don't just stick your leg back in. Personally, I don't care. I have a bunch of these and I'm not in shortage. So all this is okay and expendable in some sort. So now that I found out the spot, I'm gonna take my scissors and I'm gonna cut. Then I'm gonna look at it. That looks like a nice little circumference for the front. That'll give me just even that smallest amount of slack right there. That'll give you a little bit of room right here for how thick it is. And then my other mark here. So I want to try and get the circle to where it's folded in half as best you can. You want to try and cut circles. And you can do this to a few pairs of ply socks. If you're in like 10 ply, you can do this to, you know, a 5 and a 3. So 8 of the 10 ply have these open areas that relieve pressure. Now, I would replace, see how wide it got? That's for me stretching it. So you want to get it in place. For me, you can see where the red was touching there. So I would make sure that it was in the right spot. I'd make sure the front didn't have any wrinkles or lines. And I put my leg on it. Since I'm in a 0 ply and it's silent, I want to make sure that I can trust it. I know I got it in once. Now I'm tightening it. Now that I've tightened it, it stopped moving and feels secure. So now I have just alleviated pressure on an ingrown hair that was right there. And the more ply you're in, the more effective this method works to alleviate pain or to allow a rub mark or a friction burn or an ingrown hair or a pimple or maybe a skin infection. It can alleviate some of that pressure and give that time to heal. And that's what I've noticed out of all trial and error, because I'm stubborn as a mule and I just go. I ignored the pain. I ignored the warning signs. I didn't do any of this stuff properly when I first did. And I spent more downtime recovering because I was stubborn and didn't stop and check for these miniature adjustments. Now, if you don't have extra ply socks, I don't recommend cutting up your only pair of solids. Make sure you have 2 I would even say 3. If you don't, speak to your prosthetists. Reach out on Facebook. In the amputee support groups, there's the amputee classifieds, and you can find this to actual legs. Good luck getting a prosthetist to put on a used leg due to insurance reasons. They don't want to get sued because they didn't guarantee the leg. So that's a little tough unless you find a good doctor that'll do it. So you can always buy them for cheap, but don't ruin your only pair. And it's not ruining, you know. For me, if I'll end up setting this, I'll set this guy aside for another day. I constantly get those painful sores right here, that callousing, all that stuff. I get those constantly. It happens. Or I'll get an ingrown hair over here because of the pressure. So I'm constantly pulling this guy out. Well, the one that I previously made, not the one I made for you guys. I'll pull that one out, and I will use that one if I need to in a 1-ply like this. Super stretched because there's not much give inside this prosthetic, and that will just kind of take off some of the pressure. And if you need to do it to a few, this is a 1-ply. If you're in 10-ply, don't do it to 2 5-ply socks. That's everything you have. Do it to 1 5-ply. If you have a couple extra ones, maybe a 1 or maybe a 3. That way you have either a 6 or you'll have an 8-ply, and then have a few ply that do cover the full thing unless you're in a 1-ply. And at that point, if you're in a 1-ply or a 0-ply like I am, you're not going to be coming into this issue as much unless you have a sore that developed, or an ingrown hair or pimple or some kind of skin problem. So that's the method for that. And it really doesn't take much practice. You know, practice makes perfect. The one thing I recommend is if you do this method with the Ply Socks, and you make adjustments to your Ply Socks, and you do it right, and that might alleviate pain for maybe a week to a month, or maybe just 2-3 days. You don't know. But when you find yourself modifying Ply Socks to relieve pressure from certain areas, or if you feel you're bottoming out and you throw saran wrap, just a little bit of lipstick around the base of the saran wrap at the pin, step in your leg, take a couple steps back and forth, and if you notice that there's lipstick right here where that metal circle is, where that metal ring is, then you know you're bottoming out. And so you can do it with, and if you think that you're bottoming out, this is a good thing here. So say like you're wearing a 3 and you're hiking, and you notice your leg's starting to hurt, and you're like, man, I think I need to put on more ply, you know what I mean? Or I have that sore spot building up pressure, it hurts from this big walk, and I feel like I'm bottoming out. Even though you're in a 3-ply, if you're not going to go the route of just adding 1 ply and trial and error, if it fits good, keep it. If it's not, add another one. If that becomes uncomfortable, then you want to go down and see if, and just use the 1 ply or even a 1/2 ply. But to modify stuff for sores, my prosthetics put pressure here, and they put pressure, you can see on the outside even, there's an indent there. That's where pressure pushes in on the front of my nub there. And then due to a certain geographical shapes of my nub, in a weird way to put it, there's an indentation there. And then in the back, it bulges out a little bit on the side there because of that big bulge there. So you want to make sure that your prosthetic's fitting right. And some ways to tell that are uncomfortability, stopping and checking, having a mental note and preparing yourself. Hey, you know, after about 30 minutes of exercise, I might want to check my leg, dry it off. I might want to you know, see if I need to add more ply or reduce ply. And that's the best alternative. This method, like I said, is just to alleviate a little bit of pressure temporarily until you can get into your prosthetist who's going to make the correct modifications and stuff like that. This one actually broke because it was too thin. This one really is the only one I have with the modifications in it. You can see up here that he had to grind that down. We've had to grind down the backs before and lower this because of the pain. This whole side had to be carved out here. The front had to be carved out right there. So you can see, you know, there was a lot of work done, and then at a point, all that work that was done to that now compromised the prosthetic. And it's best to have them do their work like this. It's probably easiest if you have a prosthetic that has one of these, then they can make those adjustments. See, look, for this, all they did was add sticky tape on the outside, and when I put it in, it adds that extra layer for me. So they might be able to alleviate you even having to put on an extra ply sock in the morning, or if you're 5 clicks but you want to be at 3, you know, you can go back in, get measurements, and they can add foam pieces to the sides to push in the wings more, to give you more stability, to lower these here if you're having a lot of folds in your if you have to wear a lot of ply and it's getting creased up in the creases, having these little dimples here really helps. So they can make modifications to these, and they can add stuff to this if they have to as you atrophy, so you're not wearing as many ply socks. But when you go in, make sure you bring in the piece that you have and show them what you did. And that's just whatever ply you're in, and you start to feel like you're bottoming out, or you start feeling it. This is if you already know you have a rub rash. You want to make sure that you put your ply sock on, make sure it's not too stretched out. Wrap it in saran wrap. Push up with your finger and find where it hurts, where it's sore. Everywhere it hurts and sore, you use lipstick and you mark that area. So if it was sore that big, I'm gonna make a lipstick circle that big, and then I'm gonna put my leg on in the straightest way possible, so I'm not rubbing and sliding that stuff off and giving inaccurate pressure point locations. And then you take it off slowly. You examine where you're pressing in at. You find a ply sock that is expendable but keepable for future reference, and you go ahead, make that marking where you see it in there. You put the ply sock on, you say, okay, this is where that is, this is where it is. And you can also fill around after you take that cellophane off. You can still fill around with this on and take a Sharpie and mark it that way. But if you want to know if you're bottoming out, put saran wrap on real thin, put lipstick just in the front, just a small little circle like that, and walk a few steps back and forth. If you notice that there's pink or red or whatever color lipstick on that metal circle in the bottom, it's time to increase ply, at least by 1. And if that doesn't help, you can always do the test again and so forth until you have enough ply to where you are suspended about this far from the bottom of the prosthetic, and your nub sits like this and is suspended about that far with pins going there and pins being locked. You'll even find rub marks and rubbed raw spots right here. This is where mine locks. You can see that I have all these shiny ones up here. These are untouched. These stay untouched. This is where the locking mechanism dirties it up and scrapes it all up. This is where mine is either locked here, 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 or here. And it's a very small amount. I know exactly where mine rests. So if I notice I'm bottoming out, I'll I'll start initially just by adding Ply Socks, and if I can't seem to find the sweet spot, that's when I'll start cutting off the tip and modifying it, and then calling your prosthetist and getting in the office as soon as possible. Let them know that you did a few little trial and errors to alleviate some pain. You kind of cut Ply Socks, you know, allowing more pressure to go through, relieving some of that pain from pressing in on, and they will get your prosthetic socket modified. They will get it to where you don't have to wear a modified Ply Sock, but that is just to get you until you get to the prosthetist. It's not a cure-all fix. It's just an easy, simple little trick that's going to help you alleviate some pain during some tough times. You know, when it's a holiday weekend and you can't get to your doctor, or maybe you're out of state and you can't reach him. These are things you can do to some of your Ply Socks so it doesn't ruin your whole trip. In Florida, I had a bad infection, and the only way I got through my vacation and lived it up to the fullest, fishing in the ocean, wading, swimming, I had to cut Ply Socks and make gapped out room for pressure to leak out, so that way it wasn't pushing in so hard. So that was the goal and objective of me teaching you prosthetic sock modification, Ply Sock modification. And the main reason of this video is to kind of give you a sense of when you need to add ply and when you need to remove ply. And we covered those things already. So I apologize if this video is not the best well edited. I tried to do the best hands-on with what I had and the editing tools that I have. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you have any questions, comments, shoot me an email at amputeeangler@gmail.com, and I will respond back as soon as possible. If you have any video requests you want me to do, if you want any of that kind of stuff done, if I didn't answer a question properly, or if you're still confused on my method, shoot me a message on Facebook. I always drop my videos in the amputee support groups. Shout out to all my amputee support groups, all my AMPuNATION family, and I hope this video helps. God bless, and stay strong, because one day you'll be in a zero ply where you don't need to put on a sock, and you can just throw your leg on every day and just be good to go, hop up and be gone. So you'll get there one day. Keep strong, keep the faith. There's a few tricks in between. Let me know if you have any questions, and I hope you have a blessed day.